We are Anka. Stay tuned for updated real news.
Hello, Anka Daily News viewers. We continue to bring you the most up-to-date developments of the war. As much as the clashes on the front line, the developments behind the scenes of this war are also making a big impact. The gap between the real situation on the Russian army side in the field and the reports presented to the Kremlin is growing, especially in the recent period following Ukraine's gains on certain fronts. It's reported that there is a noteworthy crisis within the Russian military administration. Why did this crisis erupt, and what kind of chaos is the Russian command in? Since the beginning of the war, senior officials in Moscow have relied on various intelligence reports to assess progress on the ground. In recent days, however, the reliability of these reports has been seriously questioned. Ukraine's advances in Toretsk have allegedly caused great panic in the Russian command. However, what's surprising is that this failure is attributed not to the commanders in the field, but to the officers who provided false information. Russian military officials have claimed that some commanders submitted false progress reports, and this situation led to a significant misunderstanding within the army. The false reports have directly affected the war strategies of the Russian General Staff and led it to make erroneous decisions. Russian troops who had suffered losses against Ukraine in reality continued to report stories of victory to Moscow. This has become a problem threatening not only the course of the war, but also the internal functioning of the Russian army. How is this type of information manipulation taking place in the Russian army, and what's the Kremlin's response to it? In the coming minutes, we'll analyze the behind the scenes of the fake reports and the details of the management crisis in the Russian army. Before we get to our report, though, a quick reminder. The Anka Daily News team is completely real. Neither me nor any of my teammates are artificial intelligence. Even though AI is very advanced, it's still not as good as us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our daily reports and explanations. We do read all the comments you leave on our videos, so please continue to share your ideas about our content. Tell us in the comments what content you'd like to see on the Anka Daily News channel. And now let us begin if you're ready. Anka Daily News reports. Recent developments in the city of Toretsk in Ukraine's Donetsk region have once again revealed deep structural problems in the Russian army. While Ukrainian troops have made significant gains in the region, pro-Moscow military bloggers point to Russian commanders on the ground as responsible for this defeat. According to Russian military blogs, some commanders are submitting false reports to cover up failed operations and to strengthen their relations with senior military and political leaders. This situation prevents realistic assessments on the battlefield and causes Russian troops to go on the offensive unprepared with insufficient support. Bloggers note that the attacks, especially those carried out without artillery and air support, have led to huge losses for the Russian army. As the war enters its third year, the situation of the Russian army is becoming more and more complicated. Problems such as lack of training, inadequate equipment, and low morale are dealing heavy blows to the soldiers in the field. One of the biggest problems, however, is the irresponsible behavior of commanders and the untruthful reporting of military achievements to higher authorities. The erroneous decisions of Russian commanders not only increase losses, but also lead to the loss of strategic advantages. Bloggers argue that the defeat in Toretsk, in particular, has been misinterpreted as being linked to the Russian forces' nostalgia for the Soviet past. As an example, some Russian commanders, using the name of the founder of the Soviet secret police, Felix Zarensky, declared an early victory while the fighting was still ongoing. However, the reality on the ground shows such propaganda does not benefit the Russian army. On the contrary, it further demoralizes the soldiers at the front. According to sources, the Russian military leadership claimed to have made significant gains in Donetsk. Reports in early February claimed Russian forces had captured Donetsk. However, recent developments have shown these claims to not reflect reality. In fact, Ukrainian forces are making progress in Toretsk, with the Russian troops being completely surrounded in some locations. These developments in Toretsk have once again shown that serious mistakes have been made in Russia's military planning. The prolongation of the war not only depletes Russia's resources, but also negatively affects the willingness of the soldiers on the front line to fight. Commanders sending false success reports to their superiors not only disrupt military planning, but also lead to bigger mistakes on the battlefield. The Ukrainian army, on the other hand, is trying to seize this initiative on the front by taking advantage of such internal problems of Russia. In particular, the unprepared deployment of misguided Russian troops to the battlefield offer important opportunities to Ukrainian troops. One of the most striking points in this process is that Russia is now facing difficulties not only militarily but also in terms of strategic decisions. Since the beginning of the war, Moscow claimed that its army was strong and that it would achieve success against Ukraine in a short time. However, after 3 years, the reality does not match Russia's expectations. As a result, Russia's military strength is measured not only by the number of troops on the ground and the amount of equipment, but also by its strategic planning and leadership skills. However, the current picture clearly shows that Moscow's military leadership is ignoring the facts and misjudging the course of the war. The failure in Toretsk and the setback in Syria are signaling that Russia may face even bigger problems in the coming period. The developments in Toretsk show the Russian army is in a deepening crisis, not only tactically, but also structurally and strategically. The reality on the ground does not match the victory scenarios drawn by Moscow. While the lack of morale of the soldiers, the erroneous decisions of the commanders, and logistical inadequacies cause the Russian army to suffer more casualties, they provide new opportunities for the Ukrainian army. Unsuccessful operations, especially those attempted to be covered up with false reports, prolong the war and cause Russia to lose more manpower and resources. This shows that war is not only a military struggle, but also how misinformation and poor leadership can have devastating consequences on the battlefield. Instead of recognizing its own shortcomings, Moscow's military leadership continues to use propaganda to cover up its failures. However, this strategy, with its declarations of victories that have no meaning on the ground, is undermining the confidence of Russian soldiers on the front line and weakening their faith in the war. In particular, the recent tactical superiority of the Ukrainian army makes it clear that the Russian forces were misguided and unprepared for the war. This collapse of the Russian army shows that the Kremlin is struggling to keep control of the war. As the war enters its third year, it's clear that Russia has suffered not only military losses, but also global reputational damage. How do you think these internal problems in the Russian army could affect the course of the war? Do you think Ukraine can take advantage of Russia's mistakes and make greater gains on the ground? Let us know in the comments. We read and care about your points of view.